Welcome, friends. I know these days are dark and the doom is heavy. I know we can't ignore that darkness, and we won't. But I hope we can take some time to focus on the light, to make space for joy, because resistance requires resilience. So if you'd care to join me and my guest, Aranock, for some time to focus on joy. So welcome, Aranock.
Should I introduce myself then?
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Aranock. I'm a disabled trans artist. I make a lot of different types of art. I make video essays on YouTube at Aranock. You can also find a lot of my work on Jesse Gender's channel, editing and writing, and sometimes being in videos over there. I also do some work with Turb, TIRRRB. Yeah, I do a lot of different art for a lot of different people.
Your favorite YouTuber's favorite YouTuber.
Some have claimed that, yeah.
We're here to talk about joy. And first of all, how do you define joy for yourself?
I mean, joy is a feeling, really, right? I don't know how to exactly give it a definition. I guess you could say joy is the sensation that it's not just happiness, but a sensation that things are going to be all right, I guess, or that things are all right where you are right now,
I like
safe,
that.
comfortable. Um, yeah.
I think everybody has a different definition. It's just sometimes helpful to find the words that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So, first, we're going to talk about joy and identity. So, the identities that you are willing to share, how do they interact with joy? Do you have trans joy? Is that a thing to you? Do you have disabled joy?
I mean, I wouldn't narrow it into being a specific thing. I think communal connection is a
Mm.
source of joy, and that community can take a lot of different forms for different people. So, uh, if I would say like trans, I guess that would be more joy found in my transition. But that communal sense of joy, I don't think is specific to the community. I think it is a feeling of being understood and understanding someone else, especially when you are not part of the majority and that majority very actively does not want you to experience joy or happiness or connection. Um, yeah, so I would say that it's less specific and more that I find joy in any of the communities that I belong to, and the identities that I hold. But that joy is all coming from the same place of being understood, of understanding, and of connecting with other people. So I think anyone can feel that type of joy, and I think you can find it just as much in an organizing space as it is in a, let's say, identity focused space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and I definitely do find joy in seeing other people self actualize themselves and grow and getting to contribute and helping that. I know both with my art and just with being around people that I tend to crack a lot of eggs. um, and that the fact that I can have that sort of positive effect on people really is very meaningful to me because I understand what that effect is has had on myself. Yeah, I think there's also just finding joy in rejecting shame and rejecting the shame that society tries to put on you for being disabled, for being queer. In my case, obviously, for being non-white, for any sort of marginalized identity, we have this pressure of societal effect. So it is very relieving. I think when you can finally find spaces that love you as you are, rather than trying to force you into a box.
Mm-hmm. And I know one aspect of your identity that's important to you is the artist. Is And so I was thinking about artistic joy. the joy
Yeah.
of creation.
This is a controversial opinion amongst many, but I am of the opinion. I saw a clip of Chloe Zhao that put it really well, which is that art is something we need as people. Though I would actually alter her statement to say that play is something that we need as people. The concept of Homo ludens has always uh, made sense to me. That part of the defining feature of Homo sapiens is our relationship to play and to imagination. And when I say play, I don't mean literally playing a game necessarily. It is just as much playing music or dancing, but it is the active participation in those things that I think we need as people. I think, uh, as Chloe Zhao put it in that clip, we need it like food or shelter. We are social creatures. We are meant to interact with each other, to understand emotional realities, and to play. And I think art is always using fiction to play with emotions and things. And that doesn't necessarily mean positive emotions. A lot of good play comes out of engaging with the most negative emotions possible. Because I think that in understanding our negative emotions, we can more easily understand our positive emotions as well. It's not a I don't see them as separated. I don't think simplistic sort of, oh, it's just happy is something that engages me as much as something that lets you actually process things and develop real meaningful joy, rather than let's say like superficial pleasure.
Mm. Yes.
Not that pleasure's bad, to be clear. That's not what I mean.
No, but
But what I
there
mean is
is
that
there is
like
a difference between
there's a
pleasure and
difference
joy.
between just doing things that self gratify versus engaging with difficult things that you come out of with a better understanding. It's that thing of like you have to cry sometimes or you're not going to get rid of certain, like crying actually removes certain toxins from the brain physically. You got to feel some negative emotions to feel positive emotions more fully. And I think that just comes from a perspective of dealing with a lot of depression across my life and the way that, especially being like going through testosterone puberty and not having the right hormones in my body and stuff, like it makes you feel very empty. And I think a lot of people who don't understand what that experience is like, or like real sorrow, real grief, real heavy things like that, they tend to see like being a little sad as like the inverse of happiness and joy. And I would actually say that it is emptiness, that sort of yawning nihilism of nothing, that is far more the opposite of joy than sadness. I think sadness is intertwined with joy in a complicated way.
Have
Um,
you ever read Khalil Gibran's From the Prophet on Joy and Sorrow?
no, but now
Uh,
I should.
yes. He speaks of them as being like of the same and like as deep as it like it, maybe I should just find the poem.
Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find that it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, 'Joy is greater than sorrow,' and others say, 'Nay, sorrow is the greater.' But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep on your bed. Verily you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at a standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall."
It was a very beautiful poem. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's. I don't know. I definitely have a weird perspective on a lot of things. I don't know a ton of people who have experienced as much like young people dying around them as I did growing up. Yeah, just a lot of people like my parents' age are that died, and I've been going to funerals many a time since I was a kid, and it has not let up. Last couple years have been really rough, and I think it's very easy to see these things as these opposing forces. And I think there's always almost a pressure among society to be like, oh, you're supposed to be happy. And I'm in the opinion, like, if you want to be truly happy, then you need to accept feeling true sorrow and pain first. And also, what a joy to miss things. What a blessing to have had something to lose. I know we both lost a very good friend this year, and
Yeah.
that's filled with a lot of sorrow. But what a joy to have been with them in the time that we had, and what a joy to have their memory. And this is exactly what I mean. These are not these opposite things; they're intertwined. And I think there's a very like Western constructs like to force things in, to box them in, to separate, to discretize everything and I think part of the problem with that and with the sort of Western conceptions of emotion is one, they place a lot of shame and guilt around if you're feeling the wrong emotions. If you're trying to live up to these expectations, it's going to make it harder to just sit with the joy. I think also just you have to process negative emotions, or otherwise they just sit in there. They just sit in there and they build up and they build up and they build up. So I see joy as very intertwined with sorrow and strife and difficulty.
That is true. And I think in these times when everything is very doomy, it is important most to make space for joy. I think that's part of why I do this, because the system is sort of trying to exhaust us into feeling nothing. So yes, so that sort of brings me to thinking of joy. Where do you find joy and see joy in resistance? And I think you've already sort of gotten there. Is
I have a tendency to.
That's right. It doesn't have to be this conversation doesn't have to fit into boxes either.
Sorry, I've broken the structure of this conversation. It makes me think of this one quote, and I may be misremembering the exact specifics of the quote, but it's from an AIDS activist in the 90s, and they say something along the lines of, in the morning we buried our dead and we cried. In the afternoon we protested and did the work, and in the evening we danced.
Mm-hmm.
That third one is what allowed you to get through the other two.
Yeah,
and
I love that quote.
I love that quote. The sentiment of the quote, that it is not just necessary, but part of the process is feeling the grief, and part of the process is engaging in joy communally. And I really can't think of many bleaker times for our community than during the AIDS epidemic, other than maybe now. Unfortunately. So I think we need to look at that time period and look at how resistance formed and how queer resistance formed at the time, and meaningfully look at it, and not look at the sort of liberal rewashing of it that occurred in the 2000s, where it sanitized itself and the imagination of what was possible became very limited. It became, we'll just get marriage just for cis gay people.
Marriage, maybe some rainbow shirts at Target. Everybody everybody gets
the corporation's going to give us money, so that's a win, right? The cops are here now as part of Pride. That's great. We're
always complaining about capitalism, and move back to the So resistance.
Complaining about capitalism brings me joy. There, sometimes you need to vent. Sometimes you just need to sit with your friends and go, "Yeah, this sucks."
Yeah, I'd find the specific ways that it sucks to try and find some humor. Mandy and I talked a lot about humor last time.
You gotta have humor. Yeah.
You
I mean,
gotta.
again, just like with the AIDS thing, I mean, the queer community's response wasn't to get less funny or dour and serious all the time. Be like Batman. No, it was I truly think one of the most powerful weapons against fascists is joy because they're so fucking miserable. Like there's nothing appealing or joyous or enjoyable about what they're doing, really. They're all miserable. You go look at how they like talk about how they feel. They're not having a good time. And I do think that's part of it. I think their lack of humor, their lack of ability to emotionally connect, both in the negative and the positive feelings in their communities, is both part of why they're so miserable, and also why they feel the need to try to kind of put their misery on everyone else. I truly think a lot of like very miserable people just kind of spend their time trying to get everybody else just as miserable as they are, so they feel just a little bit less alone in that. And they seek all these silly ways of trying to both reaffirm themselves, reaffirm their hierarchy, reaffirm their relationship to that hierarchy. And it never really brings them any sort of satisfaction or long-term happiness. I mean, you look at all the billionaires, do any of them seem happy or joyous? Or like they're all
And they do.
grumpy assholes.
You do see them taking pleasure in things, but often the things that they're taking pleasure in are weird. Like, did you see Elon Musk texting about how proud he was of his son being an asshole to servers?
Yeah. No, I
It's
saw it.
like,
It's like it's the only way they seem to like they get pleasure out of misery and doing misery to other people. Like the cruelty is the point.
mhm.
Um,
And
but they don't seem happy or
yeah,
joyous in their life. Like they spend 100% of their time. They talk about us always complaining and stuff. I mean, they spend 100% of their time screaming and screeching about groups that have no effect on them.
they call us killjoys.
And just like
I will follow Ahmed's rule lead there and take. Yeah, okay, I'm a killjoy. Fine.
well, the thing that's funny about the Killjoy thing to me is it kind of gives the whole game away about their mentality about the world, though. What's the thing that brings them joy? Making everyone else as miserable as they are. Being a Killjoy is just being like, hey man, why are you trying to be an asshole? like they're literally like, it's a Killjoy when you remind me of like morality.
Mm-hmm.
It like really sucks. I was having so much fun breaking human rights.
Yeah,
like every time
she says when you draw attention to the problem, you become the problem. It's the she who smelt it dealt it school of.
Yeah, no, because like the other thing I have noticed this about them is that they're almost like upset that people aren't like, it's like I want to do these horrible things and then people can be mad at me for it. I don't like that. Like there's just this like weird resentment almost of people for not like being excited that they're being mistreated. It fascinates me, and it is a pattern I've noticed about their behavior quite consistently. They want to do horrible things, but they also want like social clout. They're obsessed with social standing and perspective, and so they find it very upsetting that doing horrible things results in people not liking them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to change what they're doing. They just want people to shut up about how awful it is.
Yeah, they think the suffering is good as long as it leads to something. Like any suffering that they have is going to like earn
Yeah.
brownie points in
God,
heaven or
there's
something.
this quote recently from the jackass that's playing Dumbledore in the Harry Potter reboot that was really funny to me.
Oh,
One
Lithgow,
second.
yes.
He's also said that people insisting he should walk away from the role as the iconic headmaster made him uncomfortable and unhappy.
Yes.
Oh. Does it make you uncomfortable and happy to be aware that you're participating in trans genocide? like it's not, his issue isn't what he's doing or that it's wrong. His issue isn't even what people are saying. It's literally just, I want to do that. it makes me uncomfortable and unhappy because I don't get to do whatever I want without judgment. Like it's
the thing is that like learning and growth is going to require some discomfort.
This is my thing. You can't feel joy unless you actually feel the negative emotions too. It's this thing that I'm talking about this whole time. It's that if you can't go through the discomforting process, if you can't understand that discomfort is a teacher, not always of the same thing, and it's hard always to determine what that means. But generally, when you encounter discomfort, it is either that the thing is wrong, which is what people tend to default towards, or you are wrong in experiencing cognitive dissonance. And it's very important to practice examining these things. So when you feel discomfort, what most people do is they tend to lash out at it. They, as you said, it's like when you point out the problem, that's the he who smelt it dealt it bullshit. It's the, if you say there's a problem, now you're the problem. For a lot of these people, discomfort and comfort is like their primary motivator in life. Their goal is just comfort, and they're used to comfort. They're entitled to comfort. They have received comfort. And whenever it has been disrupted, they've been able to attack that. The problem is that when you grow up in a bigoted, biased society, you're going to have bigotries and biases that you're not always consciously aware of. And when those are addressed or challenged, that is going to cause discomfort. Discomfort is not in and of itself a bad thing. If they were a little more mature, maybe, or a little bit more emotionally secure, instead of going, oh, I'm uncomfortable, fuck them, they might be able to go, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Why? And if you take the time to examine why, sometimes you examine why and you come to the conclusion, no, actually, this person's wrong. But you've at least done the process of like talking with other people, checking with other people, examining your own views. But other times you're going to come to the conclusion that you're wrong, that you believe something harmful or incorrect or that goes against your general values, and it causes you some form of cognitive dissonance. And it's perfectly okay to feel uncomfortable. And that is part of the learning process. Learning isn't comfortable. Learning is challenging. It's challenging in a controlled and safe environment generally, but that's the goal.
And I think I've been thinking a lot about shame in recent years. And I think there is also an element in the way that we are so emotionally illiterate, in the way that we are often raised, that we can conflate discomfort, guilt, embarrassment, and shame. And so that, like, if you're uncomfortable, especially the way that often people are raised to treat mistakes as shameful, which they're not. Mistakes are just mistakes, but mistakes are embarrassing, especially as we age, and feel like we should know better things. But embarrassment is just the feeling of vulnerabilities exposed. Shame is like feels to us as an attack on the body, and so we freeze, fight, or fawn or whatever, and it's a bad teacher. Shame. People talk so much about wanting to bring shame back, but I think what we mean is we need discomfort back. We need to be able to be discomforted. You have to be comfortable with the discomfort. I remember my first video to get a lot of play was talking about Abigail Thorne and her body video, which I had some issues with. And I made gendering mistakes in that because I didn't know that I used they a lot. It was some years ago and I wasn't aware yet of how people use they, them on trans women as a shaming thing. I'm aware now, thankfully, because people brought it up to me in the video. I hadn't even intended. I was just like in a space of trying to degender my language and it got all muddled. And so it is a mistake, very embarrassing mistake for a video that suddenly out of nowhere got a huge number of views, which I had never had before. But I was able to talk to people who were patient with me and explained, and I learned, and it was very uncomfortable. but I learned and I apologized, and then people were incredibly gracious. Because that's what actually happens when you make a mistake.
People actually wildly, not everyone. There's a certain type of people that are just like, they just want to be angry and they're just going to be angry and there's really nothing you can do about them. So don't care about them. But most people can understand, oh, you've made a mistake. You've acknowledged the mistake. It's over. And like, I say this as someone who's had like a weird harasser obsessed with me for ages. I didn't even know he was still going until someone told me that he'd been going for another like year and a bit. Because like Jesse and I made a single statement mistake in the Star Wars video, which we corrected as an editorial team as you would with any other project. We have a better track record than most papers of record. Like, we have less redactions, and I'm sorry, we're pretty good about it. If we find out we did something wrong, we immediately correct it. But the type of person that's there to be angry is just going to be there to be angry, and there's nothing you can do about that. The only thing that you can do is control what you do. Also true, like, it's also important to remember that like doing the right thing and evolving from mistakes doesn't mean that people have to forgive you. It's not an entitlement thing. Not that you were implying that at all, but just talking the topic generally. And I think that's just part of life, is you're going to make mistakes sometimes, and sometimes those mistakes are going to cost you connections or people's perspective on you or whatever, and then that's just reality. And you can either spend an endless amount of time trying to either defend your mistakes as not mistakes, or obsessively worrying about those mistakes and what they say about you and what's wrong with you. But I think there's a very Western individualistic thing of focusing not on how things affect the community, not on the effect on the victims, but on how do you feel, and are you a good person? Are you the good person? Did you do the right thing? And it's very intent focused and very unfocused on the impact. And I am very much on the impact over intent zone. That doesn't mean that you can't have understanding, and that it is wrong to bring up intent. I think I just think it's better to centralize those impacted. And I also think, again, like coming back to joy, which is the whole point of this, that going through and processing discomfort and coming out the other side of it can be a very joyful thing, because it is satisfying, because growth and change it's not easy and it's not fast. It doesn't make you feel good right away, but true joy isn't found in immediate satisfaction. It's found in developing real satisfaction and purpose with your life. And I don't think purpose needs to be any specific thing. Purpose can just, like, I think there's a real value, and I can't remember who described it as a stagnant life. A life where you do the same thing most days for the rest of your life and you're just happy. That's fucking awesome. I think that's great. I don't think you need to be, your purpose doesn't need to be like fight the sun. It just means like purpose, like connect with the people around you. Purpose, like do something that that you find meaningful or enjoyable or satisfying. I think people need to think more about developing long-term gratification, I guess, instead of short-term immediacy. And I think a lot of our modern systems, websites, algorithms, all these things are about immediate gratification all the time. And I have noticed how it has made people also behave worse in a lot of other contexts. My mom works as a registrar for a sports club, so she deals with a lot of parents' emails and things, right? Like, they have somewhere around 700 or 800 athletes. That's however many families, it'd be less than that, obviously, because there's plenty of families that have multiple kids across different age groups and stuff. But that's dealing with a lot of people. And my mom doesn't just work that job. She works another job. It is barely part-time. And there's people that truly just expect you to be immediately there when they want, how they want for them, with no consideration. They'll, message saying like, I need to come in on Thursday. And I was like, well, the facility's not open that day. I'm not going to be there that day. That's nice that you want to come in on that day, but that's not like you, Or they'll get mad if they don't get an immediate response and like start spamming. And my mom's like asleep or, you know, working another job or whatever and can't respond immediately. And there's just, I think, a great deal of entitlement to immediacy and real personal growth, self-examination, community building. None of these things are instant gratification. They can't be by the nature of them. They require long-term engagement with real, like, meaningful thought behind it. And I think that's part of why the right is so appealing to a lot of people, is that it constantly gives people immediate validation, immediate gratification, and simple answers to complex questions. And those answers are complete nonsense, but that's not really the point. The point is to get that feeling of comfort prioritized. And community is messy. Community is hard. There's going to be mistakes. You're going to have to deal with difficult things, and it requires, like, it's not immediate. And it's not gratifying. It's but the long-term effects are well known. We know that being directly involved politically, locally, in things has a huge long-term effect on your general happiness, satisfaction with life. Like, when they've done studies on these things, they've shown these, like, long-form forms of gratification are how you live a life of joy. Even as you deal with lots of difficulties and things. Whereas doom scrolling is not going to do that for us. And I'm saying that as a self call out. I struggle with it. I have chronic illness. I am regularly barely able to do anything other than lie in bed, and I can move my thumb, you know. Like, it is not a judgment. We all seek out some forms of instant gratification, and it's part of being human. But I do think that it's important to keep in mind, like, are we trying to develop real connections and satisfaction, or are we just trying to feel comfortable?
And I think we can be more creative in the way that we think about local, when we think about community and stuff, because, like, you and I and Adnan were never in the same physical space, but we were able to be community. Because, you know, and especially when we met in smaller groups, it doesn't matter that it's online. I mean, there are certain kinds of things you can only do offline with people, but like, when that's limited for you, for us, for many reasons, we treat the binary as online, offline. And like, internet's a mistake.
It's like separated.
Yeah,
I think the internet is just fundamentally an extension of the IRL space. It's like saying, because missives were sent by letters in history, letters were the special other zone of reality. Like, it doesn't actually reflect the way that we experience these things. I use that wording in the context of the study because that's the only thing the study studied. You know, so I don't want to claim a scientific thing or that there was evidence towards something unless there wasn't. I think, like, online communities can be really, really positive. I think most of the issues with them come out of are either issues that already exist in non-online spaces just as much, if not more.
I could tell you about some toxic
platforms.
I could tell you about the coffee shop community in Saskatoon in the 90s.
It's like all the social Twitter functions that occur online have occurred IRL somewhere.
Yeah,
at some point.
People are always people.
It honestly tells me that some people haven't actually really engaged with IRL communities when they act like IRL communities are these magical things and online has no. And I'm just like, so you're only interacting with the online and you've never experienced, like. I was coach for a long time. I was an athlete before that. Sports programs and spaces. The politics are wild.
And like, there are
people get very intense.
there are definitely some problems with the sort of all to all kind of, you know, thing where you are dealing with strangers, like a Twitter kind of thing. And the so low context, so open everyone.
Yeah, I don't think you can form community on Twitter, really. I think
you can sort of
it's a broadcasting
steal people
platform.
into smaller ponds.
Yes, I do think that So just a broadcasting space. It's not, it's more like a community messaging board, which if you've heard of community message boards in small towns getting messy, that's happened before as well.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, it's more so that I would say spaces like Discord or like ones that actually function to build a community of people that interact with each other can reflect online things positives offline things positives just as well as it reflects the negatives. I think a lot of problems just do come out of the fact that we are mediated by these platforms. These platforms are run by far right billionaires mostly who have a great deal of power and very little ethics. And I think that they incentivize a harmful negative interaction. I think on top of that, just there is a reality that for a certain type of person, the internet's anonymity makes it so they're more comfortable doing and saying a lot of horrible things very, very publicly.
Mhm.
But those same people would be doing the same stuff IRL. I mean, the people online saying slurs are probably the same ones that would yell them out of their vehicles at me or Turb when we walk around Saskatoon. And I think the other thing that I find difficult dealing with the queer community online is that so much of it comes from very rich, affluent cities where our treatment is very different. And they have a hard time understanding that, like, if you say, "Oh, just go touch grass, go walk outside," and stuff, I'm like, you get that I live in a city where people will and have yelled slurs at me out of their vehicle. Like, going outside isn't necessarily a break from this. It's just a different way to experience it.
For context for the audience, Aranock now lives in the city I grew up in. I have very clear memories of walking down Broadway Avenue, Broadway, and getting and dodging bottles.
Yeah, like it's nice that you live in New York or LA and have never experienced anything like that. But it's like, because I have been to I've been lucky enough that people have, like, my family flew me out so I could see family in Victoria, and that like friends have flown me down to LA before because I definitely couldn't afford to fly anywhere. But you know, I've been to these cities and it is truly like, I'm like, oh, you guys just live in another fucking reality. And I'm not saying that people here are categorically awful. I'm saying the group of people that are awful are very comfortable and very safe doing that shit in public, so long as you're alone. If you're not alone, you're much less likely to experience stuff. But the instant you're alone, the instant there isn't onlookers, the same phenomena occurs IRL as it does online. The people calling people slurs online because they're anonymous are the same people that yell stuff out of their vehicles because they know there's no consequences. There's going to be no social consequences to them rolling down the wheel and screaming a slur at whatever marginalized person is walking down the street. And I think there's this weird reality where a lot of people try to think like that online and IRL are so disconnected, as if everyone online isn't also real people. Caveat, there's a lot of bots now. To be fair, if you're interacting with bots, that's different. But also another example of how, like, specific forces purposefully try to sow division in online spaces.
But like,
a tool's a tool.
As a teenager in Saskatoon, there was so much information about the wider queer community in our history that I just didn't have, because the especially once the bookstore got shut down, there was a queer bookstore on Second Ave that got shut down, and there was, it was kind of the queer capital of Saskatchewan. We had more people. We had a gay bar. It was across the street from where we held the goth night, which is what I went to. We didn't have access to a lot of information that you have when you have all the information that we have now, along with a lot of, also have a lot of misinformation. But there are great benefits to the internet. You just have to use it responsibly.
I mean, it's a tool, and how you use it's going to determine what it is, And I don't think the internet is inherently good or bad. I do think that corporations controlling great deals of it is bad,
Yeah.
is a source of all problems. But yeah, I think you can build community online if you're smart about it and how you engage with it, just as you can build community offline if you're smart about it and how you engage with it. The internet has this beautiful, awful thing where fringe individuals can find each other, which is great when those individuals are queer, marginalized, the only, person of color in a city or whatever, and they can find other people through the internet and be less
Unfortunately, the
alone.
Nazis can find each other.
But unfortunately, the Nazis can find each other. So it's the thing of like, I think people like to try to present it as just like one or the other, and I don't think it's that simple. I think addressing the social issues of the internet is hand in hand with and the same process and sometimes the same thing as addressing the social issues of offline, because those are all real people. And I think a lot of people forget that when they interact with the internet. I think that's also part of why the internet can get as toxic as they can, because people have been trained to view people through media as characters. The paparazzi throughout the 2000s, reality TV and other things like that, I think has created that sort of behavior where parasociality gets treated like the same as engaging with like fully fictional characters. And people start forgetting that like the discourse isn't about some fictional person. The discourse is about a real person that is affected by it. And when we forget that the people online are real people, minus the bots, obviously, but it can lead to a lot of poor behavior, I think, where people don't think about how what they're doing could affect someone. There are plenty of people that I vehemently dislike, but will tell people off for going after them in certain ways, because it has nothing to do with that person as an individual and has nothing to do with the way that people behave and what becomes normalized.
Yeah, don't fat shame Trump, because then you're basically pissing in the pool that I'm in to try and
That's
get
a
at
good
one guy who can
example.
get out of it.
I think just like if you dislike someone, block them. Don't interact with them. Like don't. I don't know. Or if you have to interact with them, you can just be polite, but like not. You don't have to get to know them personally or something. But a lot of people are like, I dislike this person. They must be removed from community permanently. All forms and anyone who even acknowledges their existence. It's like I don't know.
But there are times and behaviors where that are
Yeah, absolutely.
but it's learning to recognize the difference between I am annoyed with this person
This person's actually doing harm.
Yeah, this person, and even like sometimes we have to live in that uncomfortable space where this person has done harm to me, and I feel that but they have perhaps learned, or it was a difficult situation, and so I have to maybe manage myself, but that doesn't necessarily mean eject them.
Yeah. No, I think it's just a thing of like I think people this comes back to the whole comfort thing, the getting discomforted thing. I think a lot of people when they get discomforted, they're like, this person's evil. They must be destroyed. It's a weird pattern that I just have noticed is getting more and more common. And I think a lot of people would be a lot happier if they spent less time obsessing about the people they dislike and more spend, actually sharing or posting about or promoting the work and communities they care for. I'm just trying to bring this back to joy, because I truly think that like being obsessive about strangers you've never met and every evil thing they've ever done, and I don't think that's great for you or the person you're obsessed about. And this has nothing to do with whether or not like the people are actually bad. There's plenty of awful people that have been turned into lol cows and stuff, but I still don't think that the process by which that happens is good. Even
and I personally, I don't believe in good people or bad people. I think
same.
we're all people making decisions, and ideally trying to make better decisions most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully trying to be generous and kind. as much as possible. So it's not possible all the time. And there are and then there are people who choose selfishness. Back to the questions.
Sorry.
No, it's fun. It's like part of the rambling is part of the point. Uh, so the next bit was thinking about joy in terms of gender, both our own experiences of gender and expressions of gender, and also the way that like joy interacts with the constructions and narratives of gender that we're taught. We had this came out of the discussion with Finn, where we talked about how, like, is there joy in masculinity? Is there such a thing as boy joy? And talked about the way that society says men can only experience joy in these certain ways, and then Mandy and I were talking about sort of femme joy and the way that we're only supposed to find it in certain ways, but there are so many other ways we can find it. So, like, I was curious about your thoughts about gender and joy, if that inspires any.
I think there's a lot of ways of constructing very harmful, like restrictive layers on what gender is and what counts and what doesn't count, and whether or not you're feeling joy about it properly. And I would say that, like, trying to segregate into a specific gender expression sort of misses the broader point, which is that I think it is joy in finding your true self, or your relationship with society and perception. And so I don't think that they're like separated or different things. I think they just come from different gender expressions. But I think the underlying feeling of joy, which is just that your body and your mind to some degree are in concert. My partner's trans masc. I do his T-shots every week, and I'm obviously very trans femme. And I would say that the joy that we get out of, or the joy that I get out of seeing them, and the joy they get out of seeing me progress in our transitions and in our relationships to our bodies, are different. I think they just different expressions, but the same underlying thing of I guess finding congruence with the self. I think I find a great deal of joy in who I am and in being a woman, and I feel a lot of connection with other women and with other non-binary people as well. The biggest thing, and I think a lot of cis people don't realize that they can experience this too, is just that expressing yourself in ways that feel accurate to the internal sense of self externally. It just brings joy, and I think that joy can even be found in playing with aspects of gender that aren't your own. I find performance really entertaining and performance really engaging. I find a lot of joy in it, and I don't really have any qualms about playing characters of pretty much any gender, but I definitely engage in it in very different ways. I would say that, like, performing men to me is almost comedic. I find it funny. I find it funny because it's not in a like, oh, men suck or something way, but it's like, though men often do, unfortunately. I don't think it has anything to do with being a man. I think that has to do with being a man in a patriarchal society that rewards and constantly cajoles them towards terrible behavior. But I find me performing masculinity very funny. It's comedic. It's silly. It's absurd. I mean, I think that's an aspect of drag generally as an art and culture is laughing at the absurdity of self performances of gender, but also of societal expectations of gender and how society expects gender to function and how it expects you to function within that. And I think it's very important to be able to draw the parallels between different gender experiences. I think we talk a lot about dysphoria, which I really just think is a misnomer for dysmorphia, specifically used to try to treat trans experiences of the body as special or externally separated. Not that I don't use the term dysphoria. It is a useful term in community when we're talking about a shared experience of feelings, but if you've ever seen a clip of like Matthew Mercer talking about his own body dysmorphia, it is not really distinguishable from a trans experience of dysmorphia. I think anyone can experience dysmorphia. There's this really horrifically unethical study from the 60s where this guy tried to force. He had these twins. He made one
Money?
of them. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the guy, but he subjected one of them to well, he assigned gender at birth, one of them as a woman, one as a boy. And for one of them, that was just, it was completely wrong. They would have been happy as a cis guy. And the mental processes and things that trans people deal with, they dealt with as well. And they eventually committed suicide in the way that a lot of trans people do because we are not allowed to be ourselves. I don't think our experiences are unique. Amanda Bynes filming the soccer film where she dresses up as her brother and goes to university and stuff. She had it really affected her mental health and stuff in the same way that it does for trans people because it was incongruent with her self-image and with her self-experience. And I don't think anything that we experience is really that unique. And I also think there's a lot of cis people who never take the time to develop a healthy relationship with their understanding of their own gender.
Mm-hmm.
And experience a lot of anguish, frustration, and pain as a result of that. Whereas someone like my mom is someone, a rare someone that I would say is absolutely is cis, but has actually taken the time to really examine her relationship to gender. And I find that we both relate on a lot of levels. And her experience dealing with cancer, stripping a lot of the traditional signals and elements of womanhood from her body, she experienced dysmorphia in a way that just is an identical description of the way that I feel it. So I think when we talk about gender and joy, it's really just about a broader feeling of congruence and a overlap of the internal sense of self and the external expression of that self. And we talked about shame earlier and how much shame plays a role. And I think a lot of people are shamed out of both cis and trans. Obviously, it affects trans people more heavily because we're so heavily policed around it. But I think the liberation of gender expectations and roles, which is different from the concept of abolition of gender, because I'm sorry, you don't get to take my womanhood from me, and I really hate when people try to present that as progressive, and when they try to present the idea that being a woman is like antithetical to feminism. It's like you guys just kind of sound.
Excuse
like,
me, are you rebuilding rebuilding the patriarchy in another image?
To be clear, this is like fringe people, but I just find it interesting when we're touching on this. That there's that type of person that interprets it that way. I think the problem isn't that gender exists, because I think all human phenomena, like we have too much of a tendency to assume that our linguistic context and comprehension is an objective rather than an intersubjective framework. Intersubjective here meaning the result of many subjects having a agreed upon reality or truth. And I don't think that intersubjective truths or even subjective truths are necessarily lesser truths than objective truth. What you are feeling is what you are feeling. That is a truth. It is not the same as like the thing we refer to as the sun would exist even if humans stopped existing and there was no evidence the word sun ever exists in the universe again. The sun would still be there. The thing we're referring to would still be there.
That's Terry Pratchett. One of my favorite quotes. He talks about this, without the story, the sun wouldn't come up. And his granddaughter asks, what would have happened? It's like a ball of flaming gas.
No, exactly, because we exist always in the subjective and the intersubjective. The objective exists and we can observe it, but the act of observation on a quantum level alters reality. Mm-hmm. We know observation alters reality. So I think a lot of people like to try to obfuscate what their subjective statuses are with that. And part of that is that we need to re-examine the intersubjective expectations and roles that are placed on on what we experience currently and refer to as gender. But I don't think that the phenomena of those feelings and experiences would go away. I don't think that in a world where gender expectations disappeared and gender roles disappeared and no one even used the words gender and stuff, that I wouldn't still want to experience medical transition. I would still need that. And I would still be very, very miserable if my body was that incongruent with how it feels like it should be. Even if all these terms that didn't exist and all these concepts didn't exist, I think the reality is I can tell you what my emotional experience is like on HRT and what my emotional experience was like on T, and I never I briefly was off of my hormones for a while because I couldn't afford them one time, and it destroyed my mental health. And I realized how bad, like, it's, you can tell. I was like, obviously I'd seen how much of an improvement I'd had since starting HRT, but I didn't realize how bad it was before until going back to it and realizing under no circumstances can I be off. I think it would benefit everyone if we stopped endlessly trying to make these like boxes for what expression and experience can be. And I just look at the whole manosphere movement, which is truly just the most misery creating misery movement possible. And they're just endlessly inventing like weird new expectations from how men have to behave. And then they get really mad at women for some reason for the expectations they make for themselves. And it's like, you guys are, you did this off in your own spaces. We had nothing to do with it. What do you?
Well, I mean, but the thing is that often, like, that we can say that men do it to themselves, but there are women who reproduce.
No, I'm not saying women don't participate in.
There are men who are trying to break down the patriarchy, and there are women who are trying to perpetuate. It's the system, not the individuals.
Oh, absolutely. I just meant specifically the manosphere movement doesn't have women influencers. The manosphere movement is a men's movement run by men who do not talk to women, or if they do, they're not doing nicely. That specifically the creators, and I'm talking because those individuals,
I really want to have a conversation with the women who marry those guys. And there are some, and I'm like,
there are some, and it makes me sad.
But you know, Mrs. Shapiro, please, Dr. Shapiro, in fact, why?
No, there are a ton of women that buy into patriarchy and into white supremacy and all these things.
I know.
Otherwise, but it doesn't change the fact that the vast majority of the driving and leading of the movement is men, and that these men are. My point is that these men keep inventing like two other men. They're like, this is what women want, and you need to live up to these expectations. And then women are blamed for that, and they like resent women. And I'm just like, women didn't say you should break your jaw with a hammer to make it more Chad. I'm sorry.
Oh, you were listening to Behind the Bastards too.
No, I wasn't. I've just been aware of these guys.
Yeah, it's like the gender is a binary, but here is my Greek alphabet list hierarchy of kinds of men.
Like, I just do find it really interesting, this phenomena of men inventing rules for other men and then being like, and this is all women's fault. And it's
like,
and then when you look
at talk to a woman.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you look at like actually what like women are looking for in dating and stuff, it is almost exclusively not that, like, not that there aren't shallow women out there who only care about men for their looks. I've seen plenty of them. I'm aware that straight people behave the way they do.
They always come at me with, but women are. What about women who have height preferences when they're talking about weight stuff? It's like, that is
okay.
Those are shallow assholes.
Yeah, like the reality is that I think there'd be shallow assholes whether or not you abolish the patriarchy. It doesn't change the fact that there's a system that they don't get, like they aren't getting systemic power from that, really, other than the fact that they're participating in their own subjugation, because all of those standards also involve reinforcing misogyny. Like,
and I haven't the foggiest idea what it is about height that is supposed to be the be all and all.
I've never understood it. I really struggle to understand people's obsession with height in partners. like,
I am short. I'm almost guaranteed to be looking up to you. So,
I wish I was
and
shorter. I'm like
even
five
if
eight.
I don't care.
No, and it's really funny because like a lot of dysphoria or dysmorphia just comes out of like societal messaging hammering you over and over and over again.
And no matter how tall you are, you're not going to make me feel small.
Yeah.
Because that just there is no thing on earth that is going to make me small.
No, people are weird about the height thing, and it's an aspect of straight culture I don't understand, but
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
two bisexuals going, I don't understand straight people.
no, I do just find that I find those entire movements really sad because I think, again, it comes back to that thing I was talking about, like their instant gratification. They constantly, they also just abuse their followers. Like any far right movement, any cult movement does this weird mix of harming and then reaffirming at the same time, so that they mix the two things. And the person seeks dopamine from the group, but they get hurt, so they seek dopamine. So it's a vicious cycle, and it's the same cycle that certain websites algorithms also rely on. I think that Twitter's innovation, said derogatorily in this case. Twitter's innovation was basically making an algorithm that, gives people dopamine for engaging in fights that make them miserable. And then they just cycle. And I noticed that a lot when I used to be on Twitter, where people would just go with these like endless quote post, quote post, quote post, quote post, quote post arguments back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And neither of them is really trying to understand or change the mind of the other person. It doesn't really matter what the stances are either. It's all just kind of a performance to get attention. When you get notifications on these things, we know that it causes a little bit of dopamine release. And so what you do is you have people, they post a thing, someone maliciously misreads it, they respond, they get likes for responding. That feels good. But then they also get the other person responding horribly, and they want dopamine, so they interact, and it's just, again, that thing of like,
or as I know, you and I know a couple people who was like, no, but they misunderstood. I can get them to understand. I can get them to understand what I meant.
yeah. No, it's various processes like that. But yeah, the underlying dopamine thing just really is quite telling to me.
Someone is going to be wrong about you, and you just have to accept that.
Yeah.
I was thinking to talking about like binaries and stuff. I was thinking about a thing I saw in a puzzle that had the question as not a dog. The answer would be cat. And I'm like, I was thinking like we all understand that binary, and we also understand that is utterly ridiculous because not a dog could be a million things. we have we have, we know there are a million animals, but we have constructed for ourselves this binary in which in which the opposite of dog is cat. And I was thinking then in terms of gender, like we are so obsessed with the opposite of man, woman is man, and it is these and gender is these little boxes. I don't know. Maybe that's weird. That's where my brain was going. I was thinking, like,
I would actually say that, specifically the dog cat binary is a reflection of the gender binary, and that often cats are treated as feminine, as shrill, annoying, etc., and dogs are treated as masculine, strong, protector, like all these sort of weird social, connotations. And it's so funny because when you get down to the details, it's like, a dog can be a tiny little yappy thing that could not defend anyone. And a cat
there
could
is
be
more
a Bengal,
variety, and there's more variety between cats among cats than there is as much as there is between differences between a Bengal tiger and a Manx.
Yeah. But it is fascinating that there is this sort of like these weird arbitrary gender structures that we have. I mean, the most obvious one, and that most people would be aware of, is the swap from pink is man, blue is girl, to blue is man, pink is girl. that occurred in the early 1900s. Because before, red's the color of blood and pink is like that, but it's regal, so it's for man.
And who's more familiar with blood, really? Really?
And then they swapped it. I can't remember the exact reasons why that like kind of swap occurs, but so much of our world is just arbitrary.
Well, for
social construct.
Most of human history, infants they didn't have different colors because you weren't sure they were going to live, and you weren't going to get. What kind of idiot would get a whole new set of clothes for the next kid when you're going to have?
Yeah,
like they would be, white
I wasn't just talking
gray
about
from
babies,
washing.
Though. I was like in general the way these colors were treated. So like you'll find a lot of like 1800s paintings where men have some form of pink or red on them, whereas women will have blue in their dresses and things. Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon, and then it fully reverses. But if you talk to some people today, they would be like, no, it is ontologically man to blue and ontologically woman to pink. These are rules of the universe. All natural laws.
Men do not wear heels. Really? Say that to
most of the history of shoes. Like, because men often wore heels, partly because a lot of men have this weird hang up about height thing. Like, the height thing does come from men.
They were
Not that there aren't women that reinforce the patriarchal ideals, because there are. Anyone can participate in maintaining patriarchal ideas. But the height thing, it has a weird long history where men were just obsessed with it. I mean, Napoleon Bonaparte, there is such a famous propaganda campaign to present him as short by the British that most people still think he was a short guy. And he was pissed about it. This mattered. This mattered in international politics. And it's been perpetuating for so long, as if like it all determines whether someone's a good partner or anything. Or good at being a military leader, or it's absurd. It's absurd. But patriarchal standards just are absurd when you look at them for more than 5 seconds.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I love like classic literature and history and stuff is because when you really get into them on their own terms and like read the customs of the time, it really shows how much they changed. Like when you actually read Wuthering Heights and like the constructions and social ideals that they're dealing with at the time and how different that is from now.
Or you could just do the most vapid modern white woman take on it. You could do that. It is an option. It's not a good one. It is not a good one. But you could like erase the central identity of one of the main characters, making the politics and discussion completely incoherent. And you can have all the conversation in the world about whether or not that handling is in any way good or bad. I haven't read the book. I'm not going to make judgments, but
it's bad. I have read the book.
I've heard it's bad,
it's
dated.
It's complicated. It's very complicated because it's in the book the power dynamics are weird, and it like the racial dynamics are like it's a very strange book that is endlessly fascinating.
And it's one of those things where I think if you're going to engage with old art that touches on topics like that, even in extremely bad ways, you kind of have to address it somehow. And whitewashing is not the way to do it. That's for sure. Sorry, the Wuthering Heights movie is so wild to me.
That is not the worst. Oh my god! But that is not the worst choice in that film. As bad as it is.
Oh no!
No, the one that has been sticking with me, the character of Isabella, who is Edward Linton's sister.
Yeah.
For one, they make her his ward so that they can age him up. Okay, so there's this character Isabella who is in the book. She is like a real innocent, completely sheltered, dumb child, just innocent. as the, Victorian girls who are, completely failed to be properly educated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And so Heathcliff, as revenge, grooms her, abducts her, kills her dog, marries her, and then sexually assaults her, so she gets pregnant and dies in childbirth. As revenge on, because the book is about cycles of violence and cycles of
I know the
oppression.
books are about that.
And so his, like, one of the his mistreatment by the Earnshaws, he then revisits on everybody else. And so he, like, Isabella is one of the most victimized people in the book. She is he is horribly abusive to her as revenge for Kathy marrying her brother. In the film, she is weirdly obsessed with Kathy, and like it turned into this kind of like freak, kind of like weird obsessive like crush on her. Weird obsessive crush then on Heathcliff. It's turned into a consensual BDSM thing. Like there's a whole thing where he like tells her he's going to mistreat her, and like to get her to consent.
Weird.
It's good to show consent, but this is bad.
This is not it.
And then it gets like into this.
You took a book about whether or not it handles these topics well. You took a book about racism and about sexual assault and made it about neither.
Yeah, and like he doesn't kill the puppy, because one of the things is they really try and erase all the things that are really bad about him.
Yeah,
because she's trying to make him.
Because obviously it's more about romanticizing and about it being.
So they and then among the BDSM dynamic stuff they show them doing like puppy play. There's a whole thing of her behaving like a dog on a leash.
But it's still supposed to be a period piece.
I don't know if it's supposed to be a period piece, because they're nothing like.
Well, the costumes and stuff are like
sort of. Ooh.
No? Okay.
The costumes are so bad. So bad.
I've heard they're terrible, but I thought they were at least trying to be, maybe? No, it's like it's just nothing.
It's like they took a bunch of period stuff and a bunch of 50s stuff, stuck it in a blender, and puked it out over like.
Again, I just had no interest in this film from the start, so I've seen like a random clip or two when people were talking about it.
No, I think you should watch it. Expecting it like it is one of the. It is so bad, it is revolting, and yet
I think
you kind of have to.
This is one way I find joy, is not watching terrible.
Fair enough.
There's a type of terrible I absolutely will watch and do enjoy, but this is not it. I think this would just frustrate me.
There are so many wrong choices, or like what the fuck choices, and that's but it's a lot of it is funny, in not the way that it was intended to be, because she's trying so hard to make you think of vaginas. Like everything is wet.
Everything's yonic.
Yeah, everything is yonic. There's all these like flowers. Everything is wet. And also she's foreshadowing the whole dying in childbirth thing. So there's blood red all the time, and you mix these together.
It's like the most childish imagery you could choose.
And then everybody is in the rain all the time in wool. It's like wet wool and linen, and it's supposed to be sexy, but all I can think is that wet wool that is going to stink, and like it was so hard. It was so pushing the image of vaginas and trying to be like, oh, isn't this arousing and sexy and transgressive? And all I could hear was like, it ended up basically like Ben Shapiro reading the wet ass P word. While in a women's clinic, like that's what it feels like. It's like you want this to be sexy, but you're really just making me wonder when my last pap smear was.
It's kind of incredible.
I have to give it up for the author of Bridgerton. You know, when she decided to make inferior Pride and Prejudice in an inferior Ever After over and over again, she renamed all the characters and made it didn't actually didn't claim to be.
Well, it's like you're not even adapting the book at a certain point. You're just kind of writing a very strange fan fiction, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing
but
wrong with
maybe just call it that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a fan fiction is a lesser art form. I don't think it is.
No, a lot of great art comes out of fan fiction.
But I do think that it has certain structural things, and I feel bad comparing. It sounds like I'm insulting it because I'm comparing it to this. There's plenty of wonderful, wonderful fanfic, but I do think this is structurally fan fiction, more so than an adaptation. And I think that adaptations can make wildly sweeping changes and stuff, but that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is like a very weird and shallow engagement with a book she found titillating, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like, I think as much as, I think that strict copyright is a bad idea for culture, but there is I think there is a point where you do to some extent have to respect there is an argument for respecting the source material. Even though it's respecting it enough.
I think some of the best art has actually come directly out of disrespecting. You can sometimes disrespect a source material to say something really meaningful. My go-to example would obviously be Starship Troopers, which is it does not have respect for the original very, very fascist Heinlein piece because it wants to comment on it. I think there's a difference between respect and just like a basic ability to actually know what the source material even is. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah,
I think you should know the basic facts about the source material. Yeah, you can disrespect it, you can engage in it in complicated ways, but
like we always take the piss out of Charles Dickens every year.
Yeah,
but we don't like rewrite it into something else and then claim it as that.
No, I think there's a difference. There is a difference between just like writing something completely different and then being like, we're slapping this on here because it's a recognized name.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a conversation to be had there about Anyway,
but
we are wildly off topic.
Yeah, sorry.
We then go to how do you make space for joy?
Mostly just spending time with like my partner, my queer chosen family, my partner's family. I mean, it's the last 2 years has been really rough. Just kind of consistently awful, horrible things happening all the time, and you gotta somehow find joy, even in the worst of it, and it has been the worst of it for way too long. I find joy in a lot of small things. I love cooking for people. I really love cooking for people. I'm sure there's someone out there who'd be like, "Oh, it's sexist food. Always cook for your partner," but and you're participating in whatever. But I just like cooking for other people. So I cook. I hate doing dishes. So Pan does all the dishes, and it's great. Because I hate doing dishes and it costs so many spoons. I get so tired from it. But I love cooking. I want a dishwasher. And so like a good example of finding joy was like my dad was in town recently, and I cooked a big meal for them and for Turb that I live with and my partner, and all four of us hung out and played Jackbox party games and just relaxed. I guess my most common way of finding joy is cooking for other people. That and just spending time with people that that fill your cup, as it were, instead of draining it. Not that reading it makes it bad or anything, but just like there are very few people that don't. It's not a negative to anyone that don't like require some social energy cost, and I find that's also really important. You got to have that, but I love getting to do social stuff, but it just drains me so fast. I get so tired. So yeah, I'd say the most common way I find joy is just snuggling up in bed and watching something with my partner, playing a co-op game or whatever. That's mostly where I find joy lately.
So I think that kind of goes into the question of what's something that's bringing you joy. Is cooking is bringing you joy. Um,
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to talk about as something that is currently bringing you joy?
Making art with other people. I love making art with other people. I'm editing a video for Jesse right now. Turb and I recently released a thing together. Pen and I have some specific plans for making games and stuff. I just find that getting to work on and with other people to make their art the best that it can be is really gratifying and really joyful. Even when it's difficult art, even when it's upsetting art, even when it's upsetting to work on art, the end result I find is um, so this word I've been trying to think of this whole time, and I just cannot think of it. Contentment. Being content. Which doesn't necessarily mean you're happy. Sometimes you're sad and content. But like being content with where your life is at and where things are at. And like it has been tough. The last 2 years has been really, really, really difficult. My body is a nightmare cage I am trapped inside and people keep dying. But and other awful things. But yeah, trying to build like actual contentment with your with life and with where you're at, I think is so important, and that is found in all the little things that we do for other people and that other people do for us. And I think this is one big theme. It's community and connection. Um, I think there's so much right now that is trying to motivate isolation, loneliness, disconnection. I we've touched on the thing around like instant gratification stuff. I think some of the worst elements of um, the plagiarism algorithms, chatbots, is just the way that it gives people instant gratification and no difficulty. They don't actually have to develop any sort of relationship skills or friendship skills or communication skills or, actually interact with other people because that requires friction and discomfort. Sometimes it's going to be discomforting, even in the best possible relationship with things. Things aren't just like magically perfect 100% of the time, all the time, no matter what. And I think a lot of these companies try to offer that sensation, and that sensation is very empty and very quick, but not. It's like the difference between eating food and having some popcorn. Like you're chewing food, sure, but popcorn's not going to leave you fulfilled. It's a nice snack. I like popcorn sometimes, but if all you're eating is popcorn, you're not going to feel too great. And yeah, I think part of that is finding connection, whatever form that is.
Which is a good lead into our final thing, which is, do you have any suggestions of action for our audience? And again, folks, as I said in the past, we're not saying you need to do all of the things or any of the things specifically. It's just trying to hit on some ideas to inspire you to do something.
I think the best thing you can do right now is it is extremely doubtful that there's nobody in your area that isn't doing anything already. You know? So I would say if you're looking for IRL action and stuff, start actually actively looking at who is already doing that work in your area. Even if there's a specific program that you want to do and things, the type of people that are going to help you achieve that are the type of people that are already volunteering and organizing structures, right? So the second thing I would say is just like look at what people's needs are and how they can be met. Rather than trying to, dictate a solution and and not knowing what the problems are. I think it's very important to like learn what the problems are that people are facing and how you might be able to help in addressing them. And again, step one, as I said, like if you're looking at what other people are already doing in your area, that's going to give you an idea as well of this. But there's always like needs that aren't being met. And I don't think there is such a thing as like a one size fits all. Like you should do this here or do this. Like I don't know your context. I don't know where you live. I don't know the specific beats. So I think a lot of people could do a great deal with just taking the time to listen about other people's concerns, about what issues are affecting them, and then taking action based on that. So maybe it's something that can be addressed by doing local petitioning. Maybe it's something that can be addressed by organizing actual, food kitchens, things like that, like ways you can be involved in that. Maybe it's petitioning the city for certain things. Maybe it's taking certain stuff to lawmakers in your area. Maybe it's building dual power structures, which is going to look different depending on where you are, but it means all of it. Let's just keep coming back to this thing of like connecting with people. And when it comes to online, it's the same thing. What are the needs that people aren't having met? What are the skills that you have, and how can you meet those needs? How can you assist? Because I think you got to centralize things not in what you want to do necessarily, but in what people need and how you can hopefully address those needs and assist people because of them.
And I think also, like, to pick up from something from our conversation earlier in our conversation, I think like thinking about the things where you're uncomfortable and trying to be okay with being uncomfortable.
You got to practice it. I do actually think you have to practice it. I think that what people refer to as emotional intelligence, which I don't love the use of intelligence there as a term for it, but that's the colloquial term, so we're just going to have to stick with the linguistics of the context we're in.
I think there's literacy, I think.
Literacy, yeah, let's say literacy. But the emotional comprehension and ability to engage with it adequately. A big part of developing good emotional literacy is developing a literacy around your negative emotions and actually feeling them. Mm-hmm. And that means anger and upset and discomfort and all these things, because you're going to experience anger and discomfort and all of those other negative things if you want to actually organize and if you want to actually make change. You're going to have to face those types of things. And if you can't process those emotions in healthy ways or know how to handle them, you can get in situations where you will actually be a liability or potentially dangerous for those around you. If you don't examine your, discomfort when you're around trans women, for example, you might be one of the many people that then participates in like socially unpersoning that trans woman when you encounter them. And yeah, I think that's actually, it's really important that people build spaces and take the time to process those negative emotions, to understand what they mean, to understand their discomfort, and to not prioritize soothing that discomfort over the actual effects it has on other people.
Like, for example, you're someone who has happened to take a job, to take a role that you are then receive criticism for, to maybe consider, is that valid criticism? Should I perhaps not take that role and maybe find a different one?
Maybe one that doesn't actively participate in funding trans genocide in very direct ways? Maybe, to give another example, if you work at a company who has been repeatedly shown to have a massive bias against trans people and which is repeatedly cited in anti-trans legislation, you shouldn't throw a piss baby tantrum when people say, hey man, why are you working at the transphobic genocide factory? New York Times writers, I'm staring at all of you, because it happens every month. One of them gets pissy about having the New York Times criticized. And what I find so funny about it, and I really recommend that everybody go watch Lily Alexander's excellent video on how the New York Times ended up here and its consistent issues across its entire history. because the New York Times has consistently defended some of the worst human actions out there with editorial support, while trying to pretend to be neutral. But it is not neutral to only present positions that are either center or very far right. And it is not neutral to use passive and active voice to imply that specific groups of people are dangerous and evil and other groups are accidentally causing deaths as they, do war crimes.
If you're standing in the North Pole, Alaska is south of you, but that doesn't make them the South.
Exactly. So yeah, you kind of have to expect that you might have some discomforting conversations because you're working at a company that its own staff mostly mass protested and tried to quit over the mistreatment and inaccurate reporting that you have been doing. So you kind of have to deal with that. I think if you start working for J.K. Rowling on Harry Potter, or you work for the New York Times as an opinion writer, don't be surprised when you have a little bit of discomfort. And personally, I'm of the opinion that like these things should be boycotted and don't launder their reputation with your good reputation. But
not everyone is in the position to quit the bad thing. But many people are.
I don't know. I as someone who, I'll be very honest, I could have a job in the degree field that I have. The only reason I don't is that the only places that have good disability accommodations that would allow me to do work are like military contractors and stuff, because that's part of how they manage to get any computer scientists to work for them. And I find it morally reprehensible to do that. I say this as someone who is consistently struggling with poverty. There should be moral lines that, and I don't think it's hypocritical of me to expect people to.
And the very bare minimum is you take accountability.
Yeah, you make your decisions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for speaking at the same time as you there.
Yeah, I'll do my best to edit it to make sense.
I feel really bad. It's anytime I'm like, I already have enough struggle knowing when the pauses and sentences and things are, but then there's the delay from online always makes it worse. So I just wanted to apologize.
Okay, that I've said it before and I'll say it again. The thing that I am not taking, and none of us are going to take from Audie's example, as many wonderful things as we want to take for examples from him, apologizing for things that don't need to be apologized for is not one.
Fair.
I very nearly made him an apology jar. So it's like, nope, you're apologizing for something unnecessary again. And no, I won't hear you apologizing. It happens. It is what it is. And we do our best to edit as we go, that's.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason I like doing this because I like conversation as method. And conversation is messy, and sometimes we talk over each other. But that messiness, I think, is a space for creativity, and because the reason that I struggle with essays is because I don't want to be authoritative. It feels too much like it's not making people. So they can be done beautifully, but I think like I prefer a way that we sort of invite people into the conversation to like be a bit more like there's no right answer. It's because I struggle to have theses that aren't like I kind of think this kind of. So like, conversation maybe I'm just so very, very neurodivergent.
No, that makes sense to me. I get where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, I think that is some good action ideas, and lots of good ideas there. So, you want to tell the folks where they can find you and anything interesting you got coming up?
Yeah, I'm Aranock, ARANOCK. You can find me everywhere under that name, but I mostly do stuff on YouTube. I'm about to try to really quickly get done this Mario video I've been working on in time for the new film's release. It's about the 1993 Mario movie and the 2023 Mario movie, and the complicated nature of film always being a product and whether or not it prioritizes being an art at all alongside that. And let's just say I don't like 2023 Mario. And there is a very specific element, which if you know about it,
I have seen
awesome.
neither.
But if you don't, I don't want you to look it up. But the needle drops. There's a specific thing with it that if you care about art being made by artists, just it makes me mad. So it's one of the few times where I've made a piece that's primarily about art that frustrates me, but it's really more of a piece about the nature of executives having control in artistic spaces and the results of that. It opens with about a page-long paragraph of examples. It's just, I almost wanted to leave it into this sort of, it's a joke structure I find very funny that like something like Mel Brooks used a lot, which is the sort of like, it just keeps going. And it like, at a certain point, it's almost absurd. But there's just so many examples recently, and I think that this film has like some really representative stuff, but it's also really useful because it has a very good comparator. The 1993 Mario is a deeply, deeply weird film where the artists were given kind of leeway to do whatever the fuck they wanted. And they really did whatever the fuck they wanted. And it's a beautiful mess. It is a mess, and I think both films are about equally 5 out of 10 films. One of them is really interesting to me, and the other is totally disinteresting. And
I do love an interesting mess.
Yeah, I'll take an interesting, very human mess over like corporate needed 4 more needle drops.
Yeah. Thanks, folks, for joining us. Thank you, Aranock, for being with us. And I hope that this has been a enlightening conversation.
I hope so too. I truly could not tell you any of what I said in the list. This is blacked out.
Good luck editing, Sarah.
Sorry.